So, as mentioned, the first thing we need to do is we need to get some measurements from REW, and we need to get those into a text format so that we can import them into MSO. So as I said earlier, I've got some measurements I've already taken. Everyone should be familiar with REW. There's a ton of different tutorials out there on how to use it, so I'm not going to go into that today. I highly recommend a lot of the resources that are out there, particularly Austin Jerry's guide to getting started with REW, which is available in his signature over on AVS forums. There is another person, Enrico Claudio, who happens to work for Rhythmic Subs, who created a similar guide for those of you that use REW on the Mac. I'm actually a Mac user. I'm doing all this work on a virtual machine up in AWS. So forgive me if I mess up a few clicks here and there, just being a Mac guy. So first thing we're going to do is just open up some measurements that I've got saved. So I've got this set of measurements that I'm going to open up that I took in my theater a little while back, excuse me, when I was working to get my subs aligned with MSO. So we'll open that up and we'll see everything pop up here on the display. And I want to talk about we'll talk about how to take these measurements in a different video. But there's some important things that we want to do around getting these set up for export. So the first thing that we want is we want to make sure that we have one measurement per sub per location. So if I mentioned earlier, I've got a couch with 3 positions. So I have 3 different positions that I need to take measurements. And I need an individual measurement for each sub at each of those positions. So I have 4 subs in my theater. So that's 3 positions times 4 subs means I'm going to have 12 measurements that I export into text so that I can use in MSO. We don't want any extra measurements whatsoever. If you look over here on the left, you'll see I've kind of got I was playing with some trace arithmetic just to kind of look at what some of the combined responses might look like. And I've got 3 of those in here that I want to remove. So you can see I've got an MLP 12 hertz raw. I've got a right 12 hertz raw and a left 12 hertz raw. I don't want those in MSO. I just want my sub responses. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove those. And you'll see the SPL lines, so those disappear up there at the top. So now I've got just my 12 measurements. The next important thing, and this is not that it makes anything, it's not going to break anything, but it's going to make your life a lot easier, is let's talk about how we want to name each of these different measurement traces. You can see the way that I have these named is based off of the listening position. It might be a little bit hard to see, but it's the listening position and then a dash and then the name of the sub. So I have an MLP listening position, and then each one of my subs has its own measurement. So I have a left front, a right front, a left rear, and a right rear. You can have your positions named anything you want. You can have your subs named anything you want. What you want to make sure to do is to keep the sub names consistent across all of your positions, and make sure that you have each of your positions names consistent. So we can see all the way through MLP, left front, left rear, right position, left front, left rear, right rear. And then the same for the left. The order doesn't matter here on the left, because this is what these names are going to do is these are going to be the file names that get output. So you'll see, for example, an MLP -lf.txt file, and that's going to make importing things into MSO much, much easier for you later. So let's go ahead and export these. So what we go do is we'll click on File up here at the top, and then there is an export option. And the second option down for export is export all the measurements as text. So we're going to go ahead and click that, and it's going to bring up a window on export settings. These measurements were taken from 10 to 300 hertz. That's a recommendation for some of the MSO guidelines per Andy. So I've used that range. I'm using the default resolution from REW. One of the things that we want to override is if you're doing this for the first time, it's going to say use the smoothing of the measurement. I don't have any smoothing on these, but I always like to force this to say, hey, use custom smoothing and make sure that there is no smoothing whatsoever on any of your measurements that you're going to export. This REW format is just fine. It'll give you a preview of everything down here. Text extension, all the other things are fine to keep as the defaults, should be fine as the defaults. And we just want to make sure that we're forced no smoothing on all of our measurements. So when we go down here and we click OK, it's going to say, hey, where do you want to save these? I've got a little folder set up for this up on the desktop. So I have this MSO folder. I'm going to right click, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm just going to call it my export. All right. We'll click on that, and then we're going to say save. And this is going to go ahead and export things. It's really, really fast, really, really quick. These files are pretty small. And we can see here in Windows Explorer that I have this export folder. And if I drill into this export folder, as I showed you earlier, all of those files have been exported with the name of the measurement trace that they had in REW. It's going to make our lives a lot easier. That's really all there is to it to get your measurements out of REW and ready for use in MSO.